Yeah, shifting gears here a little bit. Francis, we've seen quite some salvos flying. Raphael Tuju was quoting quite some scriptures this week, and
before you go there, Joe, I thought it was important to ask the question of these operations that we see.
You made a promise that you must keep. I'm sorry.
Yes. These operations, the operation that we see now happening in Laikipia, it's not new. It happens quite often. In fact, we are told that the CS Interior is likely to make some major announcements relating to security in that region. Olmoran in Laikipia to be upgraded to a divisional police station, to a police division. Save, Nagum, Loniek to be upgraded into police stations. Olngarwa, Sipili, and Olmoran to become a district called Kirema with a DCC station there. All this to try and boost security. It's a good thing. But you see, for many years, every time we have national celebrations, like we will have on 20th of October in Kirinyaga, there's usually that parade of law enforcers, showcasing their might and what they can do to protect our people. So you can now imagine what those people in Laikipia and other places that we see this kind of flare-ups, what do you think they feel when they see our law enforcers marching with heavy arms, and yet we're being told that the attackers have better weapons than our law enforcers? I think there's a failure somewhere, and until the government deals firmly with the people who are said to be financing, providing the guns, providing the food, masterminding these attacks, even a time like this next year, we will still be having this discussion here on Newsgang and maybe elsewhere like we have in the last few weeks. Even the regional commissioner himself talking about some people, some big people. And these big people have names. They can be politicians, but with a name. They can be business people, but with a name. They can be senior government officials, but with a name. If you don't deal with them and the act of financing that they are doing, then all these stories that we've talked about, the Kizungu Mingi of conservancy and everything else, will be a waste. I rest my case. And then start another one. Yes. Please start the case. Oh, the political case. Yes. I think it would be nice. Just segue into that. I think it would be nice to start it with some sound bites of what was happening this week about KRA and wealth list.
It is an open political secret that in the first term of the presidency of President Uhuru Kenyatta, the Deputy President, William Ruto, possessed some quote-unquote political blackmail stock options that he used to his great personal advantage.
Wacheni kupoteza wakati. We have already lost a lot of time. The last 4 years has been wasted and sabotaged the Big Four plan. Let us not waste any more time in useless quarrels and engagement. The rest of us are busy organizing the Hustler Nation into a political party.
I think this quarrel is coming to us in installments, bits and bits and bits. What the president said the other day, the demand now, they have
stock options.
Yeah, the wealth list that was unleashed in Parliament
by CS Matiang'i.
By CS Matiang'i. Now the demand for KRA statements. I will not be surprised if those statements find their way into the public arena. But this week, I think the highlight of all this was a response by the Madeira MP, Rigathi Gachagua, when he went very close to taking this discussion to the president's doorstep. Listen to what he said.
We are not going to answer these characters wanatumwa. Wewe kama unatumana sasa, we are not going to answer them. Wewe ongea, tutakujibu. Wewe ndio tutajibu. Kwa sababu iko haja ya kushida tukijibu watu ya kutumwa. Si mwenye kutumana hako? Si aongee. Alafu sisi tutajibiana. Kwani iko nini? Iko nini? Tutajibiana. Juzi wameleta mambo ya mashamba, tumesema tutaongea. Wameanza kutisha sisi tutashikwa. Kwani hii kushikwa ni nini? Si ni Friday alafu tunatoka Monday? Mambo ya mashamba tutaongea. Shamba ya Maumau tutauliza ilienda wapi? Na ilienda Lalani. Na inalindwa na askari na ni kwa nini? Hiyo maswali, hiyo debate iko.
Yeah, initially it was very subtle face off. It's now full blown. Do they say gloves off?
Yep.
I think that's where we are now. And probably we'll see quite a number of these. You see, what the Madeira MP was basically saying is, if the president wants, let him talk about it and we will respond to him. This would have been very different between 2013 and 2017. Now you can clearly see where it is heading to, and I would say again, this is being dispensed in small doses every day.
Interesting, Yvonne, that people are talking the way they are now. I mean, politics, indeed a strange game, that these people who are together 2013 to 2017, which they are now referring to, and none of them actually talked about all of these stock options of blackmail that they're talking about. But now, as we approach this other election, this is now ile Jamila nasema kupakana matope, because we can't quite know what is true, what is not. I mean, they were all in there, and they made us believe that they had something going together, and then suddenly here we are. We are being told, hey, guess what, guys? During that entire period, it was a real problem. You know, we were just enduring in there. And here we are. And it is really, for me, just the sheer hypocrisy that characterizes our politics.
It is. And, you know, when you take a look at the statement that was given by the senior party officials, it's important to take a look at who was really speaking. You know, let's be fair. The Secretary General of the party was not there in 2013. He, you know, was not in State House. He was not at the, you know, when they were making all of those cabinet position decisions. And so when you take a look at that statement, it will be interesting to see who is actually speaking. And I know we've talked about it, but there was
whose behalf?
And on whose behalf, right? One of the most interesting cartoons for me that said so much without saying too much was cartoonist Vic Ndula, I think, was it the Star newspaper? And it was a beautiful depiction of spilling beans. Wakirusha tunarusha, mukitoa tunamwaga, mukiapisha you remember those things? Mukitoa pia sisi tunatoa, and that is where it is, because it's the deputy president being dared on the source of his wealth, and it's Rigathi Gachagua saying, oh well, if you want to talk about, you know, the source of wealth on this end, let's also talk about this one. And it, you know, it will get messy. And now we're hearing things, like we said, that we didn't hear before, but there also seems to be a very serious concerted effort and a thread. Like we've said, you know, we've had Matiang'i, we've also had other cabinet secretaries saying the same thing. Now you've got senior party officials. And if you recall, there was a time a couple of years ago, I think, you know, just after the handshake, when President Uhuru Kenyatta said he now has peace during this second term. Perhaps that was a precursor to all that we're seeing. In fact, Raila Odinga, the ODM leader, said just yesterday, you know, pretty much the same thing. I think it was when he was receiving defectors from UDA. And he said, you know, now the president has peace to be able to carry out some of these things. And so you can see what this is. This is, you know, a concerted effort and a spirited, you know, narrative that is now coming out. And like I said, we are less than a year to the election. But who's to say that we will not see these positions shifting yet again? I know we'll talk about somebody else who's also, you know, weighing her options in a moment.
And
the flip-flop
we should go there,
and that is quite interesting. You said that, because I would be absolutely surprised if these positions didn't change in the next couple of months. But I think what we've seen over the last several weeks, one would say, is an attempt by each side, and by each side I mean within the Jubilee fraternity, even though I know how ridiculous fraternity sounds right now in the midst of all of these things. But there's an attempt by each side to control the narrative. We have the side of the president saying that, look,
he was a problem.
Between 2013 and 2017, we may not have done as much as we wanted because this guy was constantly giving us problems inside, all right? And then the DP on the other side and his people are saying, 2013 to 2017, we did great.
The best years of the administration.
We did great,
yeah.
But we had this idea of Big Four that we were going to bring to some amazing climax, but somehow these other people came, and the DP used a very strong terminology, says sabotage. So people basically came and torpedoed what was, in his view, going on very well within government as part of the Jubilee agenda. And to what extent, though, this will affect how people vote, how people think, how people make those final decisions, is usually what puzzles me in this country. Because, I mean, we are getting close to discussing substantive issues in this country. For example, the issues of wealth and how people acquired them, the issues of land, people who have big tracts of land and how they came across the pieces of land. And yet, so we'll have all these things and we'll make good conversations as we go along. Yeah. Something to kind of keep us going as we wait for the election date. But I can assure you that when the time comes, when the whistle blows, there's nobody who's going to remember the issue of land. There's nobody who's going to remember that this one is more corrupt than the other. It seems to me that we are still, again, just being huddled into... That is why you see these people who go and say, this is my economic blueprint for Mount Kenya region, this is my economic blueprint for Nyanza, I don't know, for Western, and all those things. And PLO asked some interesting questions right here yesterday and said, but where is the blueprint for Kenya? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to believe that our core interests and needs in this country have to be sliced and diced into the regions we come from. There are questions that are truly very Kenyan. If you talk about, you know, job creation and everything, economy, it really doesn't matter what your last name is. People have sort of the same needs. If you're sick, you need a hospital. It doesn't matter whether you're from Mount Kenya or from Nyanza or whatever. So you don't see people trying to galvanize the entire country. They pretend to be doing so, but they do that by looking for little corners here and there and then hoping that then eventually they bring it together. So I think that my take out from this entire thing is that there are all these narratives that people are stringing as a way of scoring cheap political points as they go along. But at the end of the day, there is really no national agenda. There's no substantive national debate that is going to inform how people vote. It is going to be along the same fault lines that we've seen over the years. And for me, that is the sad part of the story.
Joe, because kama Yvonne was saying, mwaga mtama, mwaga unga, but will people even vote along remembering what you said about a particular candidate a year ago or even a month ago? Because people will make their decisions about who they'll vote for, not based on how much information you have given us about somebody and how much you've said about someone. And we're not, half of the time, we're not even sure what the politicians are saying, how much of it is the truth, how much of it is propaganda, how much of it is just trying to find leverage or try to keep yourself in people's minds, because that's what politicians are doing now. They have events almost every single day. We give them coverage so that usiwasahau, wakumbuke tu. That's why we are seeing them, and they'll say a lot of things between now and then. And then we're talking about how now political alignments and where people will end up and who will be supporting who and how quickly that would change. Brings me to the Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru, who today was at the EACC headquarters. And I was thinking maybe we can listen to what she's saying and then continue this conversation.
I said the situation in the ground is pretty different and difficult, and I am in the process of consulting and listening to the people of Kirinyaga, and the people of Kirinyaga will be the ones who will give me the direction on the way forward, because ultimately they're the only ones who can elect me. Nobody else is going to elect you. You won't be elected in Nairobi. I'm not standing in Nairobi. You know, I'm going to be elected in Kirinyaga, so they're the ones who will tell you which position to take, and I cannot go against the grain blindly or naively because I'm a politician.
She also, I'd also like us to listen to something else she said about, it was Waiguru and Savula who was speaking about the 2022 politics. Let's listen to that too.
This is just an issue of harassment. It is intimidation. It is political. And they wanted this picture of you people here and me here because of politics.
Who's they?
The same people who are behind my impeachment. It's because I hinted that I am reconsidering my position, and it's very unfortunate. When the time comes, we will say which direction we are going, and we are listening to the ground, and we're listening to very many people. So at this point in time, I think it will be premature to say exactly where I'm going. Let me continue listening. Let's continue talking to other people, other leaders, and then we will decide on our political move.
We are quoting Anne Waiguru as ANC. I'm here as the deputy party leader. We don't want this governor to be intimidated by anybody. We know it's because of politics. We know in Central it's so difficult to sell a certain political party and a certain individual who is contesting for presidency. We are quoting her. That's why we are here. You have to quote a girl. Pole, 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 pole. That's why you are standing in solidarity with her as ANC. Don't tell us, Victor.
No, I think there's something... I think there's something Anne Waiguru's remarks are telling us. I think they're telling the story of political interpretation of offenses. Because she seems to suggest that her alleged offenses are dependent on where she stands politically. Because she's safe from EACC if she stays in one political formation, and she's unsafe if she joins another political formation. And I think now the onus is on EACC now. If she's a suspect regardless of where she stands politically or who she supports politically. And the offenses out to be the same. They're supposed to be the same regardless of what the party manifesto is or who she supports or not. Because we had the deputy party leader of ANC speaking there and saying they're trying to quote her. We've had Musalia Mudavadi, the ANC leader, saying he's thinking of looking for a running mate, maybe from Central Kenya. And Savula has clearly said that they're trying to woo to woo her.
I find that particularly disgusting, quite frankly. I mean, if you think about
even
it,
insulting for someone of Waiguru's, caliber.
But also just, I mean, of our entire investigative process, the entire justice system in this country. Because look, I mean, there's an issue here that has been laid on the table involving some impressed. Okay?
Over 50 million.
Yeah, that's a very particular issue. You see? So for me, I would be happy for someone to deal with the particulars of that alleged offense, instead of going there and saying, oh, this is politically instigated and whatever, which might, some people might say those things happen in this country. But at the end of the day, I would spend more time dealing with the substantive aspects of this. If I really do not have a case to answer, I would really spend more energy trying to demonstrate my innocence in that. But in this country, we find a cheap route out of these kinds of things where you would mobilize people. Because what were those ANC people doing there? What do they know about that case? How can they say she's innocent? They don't know that. She may well be innocent, but how do you tell that? By standing at beside the revolving door at Integrity Center.
But to be fair, he didn't talk about, whether, the facts of the case.
No.
He's there on a completely different mission, to be fair.
Savula said she's being intimidated. She's being intimidated. She's innocent.
Yeah, but my point is, theirs is political, so it's got really nothing to do with the facts of the case.
Exactly, which is the tragedy of the whole thing, that no one, in that whole shenanigans we've seen there's no one who's dealing with what, to me, is what people need to be dealing with when they go to EACC.
Unfortunately...
Because that was not a political rally.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the tragedy of the fight against corruption in our country. There are some people who have faced very serious corruption issues, but they have found a way out of them by merely invoking the question of political persecution. There are also people who probably were innocent, but because of maybe their political leanings, their political identities, their political choices and preferences, have been, profiled in one way or another. It is important at this point maybe to say, fight corruption and deal with it away from politics. It may be a difficult issue to extricate the two, but it is important to do that. Otherwise, every time somebody is summoned, a governor, an MP, a minister, a PS, is summoned to EACC or to DCI or to whichever institution that is handling a certain complaint, a certain issue, as long as you invoke political persecution, then you can easily get out of it. And this is important if the institutions that are handling these particular things can be able to not look like they are being sucked into the politics. Be it EACC, be it DCI, be it the DPP, be it all these institutions. If they were to do their work and let the politicians do their work, such that if politician A, Cabinet Secretary B, or PSC is called to answer to certain questions, they are able to answer them particularly. Because some of those issues that are being raised today were also issues that were raised in the National Assembly during the impeachment proceedings. You remember?
Yes.
What did Parliament do? Parliament gave the governor a clean bill of health, the Senate. So if these issues were there and they were cleared by the Senate, then what is the difference then and now? Is it probably the change of political standing or not? So if you intertwine the politics and the corruption allegations, then you are unlikely to get anything out of it. Because depending on where, Joe, you keep saying where you sit.
Where you stand depends on where you sit.
The same case applies here.
And I think that, Jamila, is a tragedy of all this, because now the facts of the case are obfuscated in this entire thing that nobody can quite tell. And I think it is something that politicians like using very effectively to try and shift the debate away from these questions. And it is also, sadly, a self-perpetuating, self-sustaining system, in the sense that there have been allegations in this country, and a lot of them founded in fact, that when people are close to government in the past, even when there are serious questions surrounding them, that those things are not pursued as aggressively as they would be if they are not in government. That is not to say that people who are opposing the government don't have corruption issues. And I think that is where the line is, that because it has happened so many times in this country that people who are connected to power do not quite face justice in the same manner that the rest of us do, then it is the people who are now opposing government, who are going against what is perceived to be the official government position on any given matter, are easily going to take advantage of that and say, oh, you know, they are going after me just because I have said I don't want to do this, even if there are questions to be answered. And I think the onus really has to be on EACC and these other independent institutions that we have to demonstrate that they can truly discharge their mandates above the political din and be able to render verdicts that are based solely on the letter and the spirit of the law. And Jamila, you wanted to come in and say something.
No, it's true. The onus is on the EACC, because we've seen so many corruption cases, so many. I think we're told 2 billion is lost a day through corruption.
According to the president.
According to the president. And I kept thinking in my mind what 2 billion can do for us as a country. Now we are facing janga la ukame ndio hiyo limetangazwa kwa janga la kitaifa.
Actually, that is the amount of money that the president ordered to be released by the National Treasury to deal with drought in the stricken areas.
Exactly. And we're listening to
the 2 billion
2 billion
thieves.
We're listening to Dr. Asha Mohammed here from the Red Cross, Joe, talking about 2.1 million people and about how almost more than 3/4 of them are from only 10 counties. 30% of people living in those 10 counties are facing starvation. And there are all other factors surrounding it, from COVID-19 to loss of livelihoods to the hardships those people have in the areas that they're living and all that. 2 billion shillings, which can be used. But Joe, sorry. Okay.
Yes. No, Karen, because we have a short time, and I wanted to talk about, you know, what's happening. Obviously, you know, Anne Maguru is saying Jubilee might not necessarily be the party to take her there, and a lot of the movements that we're seeing, when asked whether she would consider working with the deputy president, she said no comment, you know, saying the people will drive her, and all of this movement that we're seeing shifting, you know, from, I mean, many would remember when she was seen with the deputy president, was it in 2018, I believe, and then, you know, back to being being on the handshake side and then perhaps now rethinking that position. And all of this movement is due to the fact that, there's no incumbent, in 2022, and it's a free-for-all. And surely we cannot end the conversation without talking about what's happening in the One Kenya Alliance and all of what...
The dream
that has become a nightmare. Was it you or was it Wahiga Mara who talked about the death before the birth? If you consider the dramatic fashion in which they finally announced the final death of NASA, it would seem like they were going into something that was a little more organized, and yet...
Which one did you pronounce, Yvonne?
The first one.
You pronounced one of the deaths.
The first one. I knew it was done, years ago. So that death is very dramatic, and then we have a very dramatic birth, or was it a stillbirth? And a lot of issues still pending, within the One Kenya Alliance, the place of KANU there being tentative, considering they're in a post-election coalition pact with the Jubilee party. I mean, take a look at the trouble that Moses Wetangula is having within his own Ford Kenya party. And then you've got, the posturing and, sort of similar to a pufferder or a pufferfish, when you sort of... make yourself look bigger and, up your stakes and up your stature. We saw, I think, a few weeks ago when Kalonzo Musyoka launched his presidential secretariat at the OCA, or the One Kenya Alliance headquarters. So all of this, and then coupled with the statements we saw, was it yesterday or the day before?
Yesterday.
From the Wiper leader saying it's you run or you run.
Actually, that bite is there.
We have that. I don't know if we can listen to, the senators. Senator Enoch Wambua, who was speaking about, Kalonzo Musyoka's candidature. He must run, or he must run, or he must run.
Today, we must put to rest wild speculations that our party leader, His Excellency Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, Senior Counsel, would consider deputizing former Prime Minister in the 2022 presidential contest. This speculation has no basis, and it is not one of the options we are even thinking about.
Not everyone likes the presidency of Ruto, and not everyone likes the presidency of Raila Odinga. Therefore, OCA must give a third option so that Kenyans are not tied to those two. And in that regard, a lot of Kenyans are promising if OCA stays together, within a few months, by December, you'll get a surprise.
Yeah, and first they said they would unveil their candidate by September. Now it is December to give them enough time for the campaigns. And for all of us who sit across this table, those invitations we get for press conferences, from is it the One Kenya Alliance or is it the Wiper Party, where a major political announcement will be made. It's all of this.
We also told KANU will be making a major announcement.
So
you wonder how major it is, because you can already tell what is going to be said. I mean, even this one, it was very easy to tell what was going to be said. They're crafted as major so that they look big, and you send teams to go and cover. Yeah, big. But you see, there are some interesting things that we must take note of. Each time there's a party leader from one region or a certain region who says, I'm in the race for the presidency, those close to him or her will likely benefit from his candidature. Because the closer you are to the party leader, the higher your chances of clinching that party's ticket. And because that region will be the candidate's springboard, it becomes easy for those allies, we call them allies, to get back their parliamentary seats. But you can imagine if it is a free-for-all kind of a scenario where if you're in a coalition and Party A, Party B, Party C, Party D that are in a coalition, each of them can field a candidate. So by pushing your presidential candidate to be in the race, you're also trying to better your chances. You're
staking your fortunes.
Yeah, you're also you're also trying to make better your chances of clinching back your seat. That is the
explains the demons of
that is the unsaid thing. In fact, it is likely that even after this tough talk in a press conference, when the rubber meets the road.
You have to say that slowly.
Banana things.
I noticed that.
Yeah, when that presidential aspirant makes a decision based on their fortunes and their chances, at the ballot in the ultimate election, some of these guys may be very frustrated. It reminds me some years back when President Uhuru Kenyatta then decided to leave it to Musalia Mudavadi. I remember that news conference at Boulevard because I covered it. And some members of parliament, among them Kareke Mbiuki, told the president, if you go that route, all roads will lead to Mbondo. And thereafter, the Madimoni story came.
Yes.
So I will not be surprised if similar things happen.
And I think, Joe, the OKA group has raised expectations of support without meeting them. It's been an alliance of promises. So wait and see, wait and see. But I think for them, and you say the main thing is who will end up being the flag bearer. Because Kalonzo Musyoka sees himself as the senior-most politician within that group. Musalia Mudavadi, with his background of having been a finance minister, believes that he has the solution to Kenya's economic problems. Gideon Moi has now that legacy, the history of KANU, and also his father having been former President Daniel Arap Moi. Moses Wetangula has been in and within government for a while, since around 1992. So I think the question is, each one of them wants endorsement from the president and from Raila Odinga. In fact, for them, they hope, their wish is the handshake gentlemen would leave, would exit now, Achiawa, but they cannot have endorsed 4 people. So
but I think that is to five because we have to really finish them. But I think one of the things that we must say here, which has been the major catalyst and a big problem for all of these things, is the BBI judgment from the Court of Appeal. I mean, before that Court of Appeal judgment, everything was all rosy for these people. Why? Because it was easy to build a coalition. Even that One Kenya Alliance was going to work in some way because someone would be, you know, the presidential candidate, the running mate, prime minister, deputy prime minister, and all of these things. So there were many pieces of that cake to go around. Right now, you're basically talking about 2 positions and 2 positions alone. And that means, therefore, that coalition building has become that much more difficult. This is the same problem that Anne Waiguru finds herself. And remember, this idea of rethinking and consulting the Kirinyaga people wasn't an issue before BBI. As a matter of fact, she was one of those people who were quite bullish about the BBI, about Raila Odinga's candidature, and all of these things, the handshake and whatnot, because she thought that in that mix of... She had a place, and then suddenly it's not clear anymore. So she has to, everybody now is running wild, trying to find something to clutch onto, because the problem with these kinds of things, if you stay too late, you find that all the patches, the little patches that are left have been taken. So you find yourself running on the outside. You remember that little game we used to have where they tell you to be in groups of 2, groups of 3, and then suddenly you find you're all alone because everybody has paired up and there's no more room for you.
Every so
and you're
often,
out of the game.
And you're out of the game. That's it. And I think that's what's happening right now.
Every so often when we go for team building sessions, there's this game of chairs, where you have 5 chairs. And 7 people.
That's what I'm talking about.
So every so often you run and one is removed, so you have to keep racing. But you see, eventually...
And they don't move too far from the seat.
Yeah, don't move too far from the seat, but also be alert.
And you're ending the show.
Yes, but even as we do this, Joe, it is also important to remember the basics. The basics are simple. As time goes, as the countdown continues to 2022, most of these aspirants, because so far I think we have about 10 aspirants or so, eventually quite a number of them will realize the seriousness and the enormity of the challenge that they face. Yeah, I repeat what we said here again. They will have to ask themselves some fundamental questions. Do they have enough people, votes? Do they have enough resources to finance a presidential campaign, which is a costly affair? 3, do they have enough networks, locally and international, to facilitate their bid for the presidency? Some will automatically fall by the wayside. Others will run all the way just to make sure that they make history for themselves and for whatever other reason that I was on the ballot. But eventually, those who are serious will have to make certain choices. Can I go all the way to the ballot? Either go all the way to the ballot and maybe get some stake in a runoff if we'll ever get there, or maybe identify what you would call the main horses, latch on one, go all the way to the end. You remember if for Oka, for example, you remember we had CORD that mutated to NASA, and then now has mutated to Oka. Same same thing differently.
That mutation, I'm not sure whether it is complete, but
same thing differently.
It's a variant of interest.
Let's take this home.
Yeah, let's take it home.
Yeah.
And so can we do piki piki ponki between Jamila and Yvonne?
Yvonne nimekuachia tu.
It's Yvonne.
It's Yvonne.
The perennial crisis in Laikipia is heartbreaking and frustrating. Year in, year out, the loss of lives